We're joined by Adam from San Francisco. How are you doing, Adam?
Hello, sir. Flying, mate. What about yourself?
Sound.
Nice.
Yeah,
Oh, we got some handlebars on show straight out of the gate.
we have, mate. I've got Fruity. Thought we put Fruity back up in lights, just to let him know that we're there. We're always watching from afar.
You're like Batman, the vigilante.
Wow. Terrible.
No, it's funny. Do you know what, man? Now that I see the photo, and I forgot to bring it up last time. I thought I thought Mr. Bull's conduct on the TNT show last week was shocking, to put it mildly. Um, he was cornering Sylvester. And obviously, the Noakes fight was a nightmare for him from start to finish. Even when he did touch him, it didn't look like he could put a dent in him. And you could see the ref was close to stopping it a couple of times. Obviously, it got stopped, whatever. But then after the fight, Bull goes over and he's talking with Noakes for a second, and that's whatever. But he's kind of laughing and chuckling. But the camera pans away, so I'm like, right, this must, short thing. Laughing with an opponent that just flogged your own fighter doesn't really sit right with me, but it was like, right, short interaction, whatever. The camera comes back. He's over with Noakes and his team while Sylvester's in the corner, mangled, and he's having a laugh and a joke. Now, I have no idea what they were talking about, but to me, it doesn't really matter. Again, your fighter got pummeled and he's obviously in a bad place. Why are you over in the opposite corner having a jolly? It's just, I don't know, mate. It's To me, it's absolute insanity, and I haven't really seen it before, not to that level. You would swear Richard Pryor climbed out of the grave and was cracking jokes or something the way the boys were going on. So bad luck for sure. I don't know if you caught it or picked up on it.
Yeah, I've seen it, but you can't beat a bit of Fruity, can you? He's always there or thereabouts, isn't he?
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, again, it's regardless of performance in my book, fight ends. You go over, you shake hands, you give a hug, whatever, and that's that. You know what I mean? I'm not saying you should be arguing and this and that, but having a full blown laugh to me is just it's not cool. Especially with how the fight went. But whatever. Not
Uh,
not not overly surprising. Go ahead, mate.
yeah, do you know trainers? Do you feel that nowadays certain trainers make it about them more than it is the fighters?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's a full blown epidemic. I mean, you see it. I think you see it a lot with or we saw it a lot with kind of Buddy McGirt, especially in the Aziz fight. Um, where it's making noise for the sake of it, just for a sound bite and to kind of put himself, I wouldn't say on lights, but like you see this the whole time now. I mean, I think it's kind of a factor or it's kind of a byproduct of social media, where the likes of these channels are always looking for an interview. They're always looking, brutally honest with this trainer, brutally honest with that trainer. And you listen to it and it's like, there's nothing brutal about any of it. But I think coaches, look, listen, there's 100% good, honest coaches out there still. We've talked about them. You see these camps where it's nice and tight, like the likes of Jonas and Joe G and whatnot. But you see the other type of characters that are always trying to put themselves in the shop window. Oh, well, I'm not working with this fella, but if I was, I would do this and this and this. They're just trying to position themselves. Uh, and yeah, to me, it's not right. Not right. Definitely not. But these boys have positioned themselves. The cream or the shit always rises to the top eventually. I.e., Miss Ebony Bridges has left Mr. Caldwell after one solitary fight. So the proof is in the pudding, mate. No doubt about it. What do you think about Mr. Caldwell getting the boot?
What we call it after loss.
Yep. Yeah.
So, because she's that type of diva, so I kind of feel for him with her because he'll have known what she were about after 1 week.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the mask will have slipped. I can assure you.
Yeah, but again, it's like, you don't know fully until you get coaching somebody. But if you're looking at Ebony Bridges from the outside, you have to realize what's going to come with coaching her. You got the bikinis at the weigh-ins, you got the OnlyFans, you got the publicity, So I think if you're gonna represent somebody like that, I think you kind of have to know what's coming down the pipe. Um, but regardless, I think there's been too much fuss made about her. I mean, from a marketing perspective, she's got it. She's a good talker. She doesn't mind putting herself out there, literally. Um, but when it comes to skills to pay the bills, I think she's lacking. She's got heart and she's stuck in there on multiple occasions, but I don't know. I never saw her as a bona fide champion. Um, and I definitely never saw her as the Muhammad Ali of female boxing, as the greasy gad put out there. So,
Where does that leave the God now then?
oh, Jesus. I don't know, mate. I don't know. He'll probably have to repaint the toenails and start from scratch, maybe.
Did you see that picture of him on that rock with his black feet or the painted black toenails all the way across?
No, man, send it to me. I know you mentioned it
It's on
before.
it's on one of my thumbnails.
I'll go back and have a look. I can't place it off the top of my head, but
Just type
um,
in Gareth A. Davis, black painted toenails or something, it'll come up.
I will. I will. And
Strange, strange guy, isn't he, Adam?
he is. Here's what I would say, right? Yeah, I think sometimes we're having a laugh on here. I think at times stuff can come across as personal and all the rest. Now, the fella paints his toenails. Is that my cup of tea? It's not. I don't paint my toenails. But if he wants to, that's his game. If he wants to wear the funky shirts and whatever, my whole issue comes into it that, you know, you're inadvertently representing the sport. So, if he was a straight shooter and he was acting the way he was acting, I wouldn't really give as much stick. I know it's low hanging fruit with the toenails and stuff, but you know, I don't think he's sincere in his takes, mostly ever. And that's what I'm giving the that's what I'm giving him grief about. If lads want to paint their nails, they want to wear funky fruity glasses, whatever, be my guest. But when you're putting out, crap into the orbit, that's when I start to have the problem. But he's definitely a funky character. That's unquestionable.
Could you imagine if we had Colin Hart and Bunce stood on a rock next to him, right, and they had their toenails painted black as well? What would we call them? The Black Toenail Gang.
Uh, no idea. It's
I
yeah.
can imagine it though. I mean, so they give him a pass, but if all happens down the line, they can always say, "Well, the signs were there."
Oh my days. No, look, he's definitely again, his the color of the toenails, the style of the shirts and all, it wouldn't be my cup of tea, but um yeah, I don't know. Something tells me we won't see Bunsey or Colin Hart with the nails painted. Definitely not in this lifetime anyway.
Yeah. Moving on from Colwell and obviously working with Dylan White and Ebony.
Uh-huh.
They were too well after leaving Mark Tibbs, did they?
No, they certainly didn't. They certainly didn't. The whole coaching and jumping's a weird one because if you look at a guy like Fury, where when the family situation was good, when everything was good with Peter, obviously we've talked previously about the feints and the way he moved and stuff. He looked settled and he looked to build on it. But since he's chopped and changed and moved coaches, now because of how good he is or he was, I think he's been able to kind of manage that well. I think he's taken things from his old days and brought them through, and I think he's took stuff from Sugar Hill in terms of like letting go on his shots. So I think there's rare cases and where jumping around can work, but I think for the most part, you should be looking for a settled environment, i.e., you need to do your homework before getting into bed with a coach, in my opinion. This jumping coach to coach, 2 fights with this guy, 2 fights with that guy. I don't think it's productive because if the guy you're moving to's got a completely different style, you're almost tearing up 18 months of your career and you have to start from scratch, new training methods and stuff. So I don't know, mate. If it were me, or I think consistency is the key. And I think the point you brought up earlier where, fighters are moving constantly and stuff, I don't think it's good for them ultimately. So again, I think consistency is the key with a camp if you can manage it.
How do you see that fight going on Garner Joshua?
I think Joshua wins either by wide points margin or a late stoppage. One or the other. I don't think he'll make the perceived mistakes of Fury made, and that I'm not saying he'll be, properly on his bike the way he was against Ruiz in the second fight, but I think he's going to respect the power and he's going to respect the inside work that Ngannou showed against Fury. So I think he'll try and do something similar to what he did with Wallen, i.e., kind of stay mostly on the outside and, try and get in with throwing combos. Like that's something that AJ hadn't done in years where, he was punching in bunches against Wallin. I know people say, well, he's not that great and all the rest, but you have to give the fella credit where credit's due. He was actually letting combinations go and his timing looked pretty good. So I think he'll kind of box on the back foot and try and break Ngannou down over time. Because I think for Ngannou to win, I think it needs to be up close in the phone box. And I think AJ still has the legs and the athletic ability to get around. So I think wide points margin, i.e. like an 8-4 or a late stoppage. What do you think, man?
I think a stoppage inside 6 rounds for big
Do you,
meat.
do you?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll send a statement then, won't it, to Fury?
it will. It absolutely will. And the game of boxing, I you can argue about the percentages at all. Teddy Atlas always says it's 80% mental, 20% physical. But if he goes in there and stops Ngannou, you know, in a short period of time or stops him at all, I think that'll put more confidence back into AJ. Obviously the Wallin fight would have given him massive confidence given his previous performances. So I think if he can stop him early, it'll be another feather in the cap for him where he'll get back to where he was mentally. And I don't know, man. It's kind of like the Usyk Fury fight. Like we talked about when the odds came out, the odds were wide. Fury was a big favorite. And you remember when the AJ fight was touted previously, Fury was a big favorite too. I think Joshua and Usyk, at least with the bookies, have closed the gap. So it's good for the heavyweight division for sure. Like I think, there was a point after Wilder 3 where a lot of people thought that Fury would take care of Usyk easy and he would still take care of AJ easy as well. But I think that opinion's changed for most. So I think it's good. I think it creates more intrigue if Joshua does get a stoppage against Ngannou. And yeah, I think it's good for the division, Paul.
Yeah, okay. Trainers allowing fighters to pad records out. Do you think too many lads are padding the records out to say 20-0, waiting for a big payday? Then when it don't come, they're having to go in a fight, just a normal like British level fight or European level fight. Because they've never been in a firefight, they're getting found out. Do you think there's too much padding going on?
I think so. Now, how much of that is trainers and then how much of that is promoters? For example, if we look at Yard's last fight, the fellow was tough that he was in with, no doubt. You have to give him that. But I mean, the fellow was not on Yard's level whatsoever. Now, is that good for Yard long term? Where,
Good
he's
top
either,
trainer manager, isn't it? Sunday.
yeah.
Manages and trains him.
I mean, look, Yard's whatever I like Yard's style. I think he's good to watch. He comes forward, he does bang. Like I'm not saying he's, elite level, but I think from a fan's perspective, he's good to watch. But I think if anything, he needed rounds, and I mean, I don't know if they knew in advance, but I mean, it looked from the first 20 seconds, it was a case of, when's Yard going to get this fella out of here? I don't know how much that does for him, just going in and absolutely flattening the fella in short time. But then again, all of his other big fights have been, Kovalev, Baturbiev. I mean, where do you think the middle ground is for like a guy like Yard, where it's not better Biev or it's not cannon fodder? Well, what do you think of middle ground? I know there's talk of Mundo and I know there's talk of Boachi and stuff, but I think they need to get closer to the middle man. Like if you look at that young Abdullah Mason, like I'm not saying he's fought any killers or whatever, but if you go back two fights, I can't remember the fella's name. They've put him in fights where, in my opinion, he's going to kind of work on his craft. Like he went 6 rounds 2 fights ago. And the reason I'm kind of so high up on Mason is because, technically he's excellent, but he went into a fight where he stood in the center of the ring and banged with a fella. Now, if you're a promoter and trainer, you might be looking at that and saying, Jesus, what is he doing? He might lose the O. But he was looking to get in there and get rough and tumble, i.e., not avoid, you know, not avoid what he needs to learn. Like you're saying, boys get into hot water where they haven't been tested and, they crumble under the pressure. So I definitely think trainers need to get better. Like you look at that fella, what do you call him at light heavyweight? Is it Guillermo Ramirez, the fella that Bivol beat a while back? Um, he was 45-0, I think, or 45, close to 45-0 when he fought Bivol. And everyone was saying, oh, this is a massive test, and this guy is huge, and he's a big puncher, and all the rest. But Bivol made him look absolutely pedestrian. I know Bivol's a brilliant fighter, but when people see 45-0 or whatever it is, they're like, God, this fella's up to something. And I'm not saying he's terrible, but there was levels in it. So yeah, I know I've rambled on, but you look at some guys are 45-0 and then they get in against an elite guy or a level down and they get smoked. That shouldn't be happening. Um, I think we need to get away from the fear of losing the O in boxing. Like I know Floyd's done a lot for I say Floyd, I think in some ways Floyd kind of was bad for the sport. And what I mean by that is obviously he was great to watch, all the rest through his career. I know people said some of his final fights were whatever, but Mayweather created that environment where it was, the best ever, 50-0, 49-0 and stuff. Where lads, even in America before the Saudi money, lads were expecting, to make 20 mil a fight and stuff. That was only happening for Floyd. So I think it created this like bubble where these average guys thought they needed to always be on pay-per-view, they needed to always be earning 20 million quid plus, where they just weren't up to it, like they weren't worth the money. And then there's also that environment now where everybody's afraid to lose their O. It's life and death. Um, we need to get away from that because to me, that's a massive advantage the UFC has over boxing. That from the word go, there wasn't this fear of, oh, you lost your O. Like if the two best boys in the division fight in the UFC, it happens. One man wins, one man loses, but there's still respect there. I think there's this thing where like you lose your O in boxing and everyone always almost looks at you as a pariah and as a busted flush. So I think if the sport's going to survive, we need to get away from the O mentality. What do you think, mate?
Well, getting back to Yard, look at Anthony Yard, right? He's either in big money fights, and he's not,
Mm-hmm.
not he's not even got a British title yet, has he? He's either in big money fights or he's fighting guys that can beat very easily. And it's like Callum Smith. When have we ever seen him in a firefight?
Mm,
He's been in 2 firefights. He's lost Andy Canelo and Bitter Beef. And Billy Joe, we've never seen him in a firefight, so they got him with Canelo, had we? But
no.
picking and choosing who they fought, and they had like long reigns. Billy Joe was a world champion 5 years, wasn't he?
Yep.
Over 5 years. Long time, isn't it, to have a world title belt and not really
Very.
doing it with belt. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. He'll look back in time and wish he'd rolled dice.
I agree. I agree. I think obviously it sounds like a mad statement when you look at Billy Joe's career on paper, obviously he's done very well. But I think ultimately he's underachieved in terms of, he could have had a long reign. He could have had a lot more defenses and stuff. And again, look, on paper he's had a really good career. I'm not trying to crap on the fella, but I think he could have done much more. We've talked about that previously. I think he could have been a British great. But again, that's down to him. But going back to your previous question, we talk about picking and choosing. You look at a guy like Ryan Garcia, you know, he wanted the tank fight. Oscar didn't want him to take it. Then Tank's team came back, rehydration clause, weight clauses, you can't do this, you can't do that, But Garcia signed up to all of it. The point I'm making is if fighters really, really, really want certain fights, if they have a certain level of profile, the fights can be made. We've seen that. Um, like I know that Crawford had to leave PBC, or sorry, he had to leave Top Rank to make the Spence fight and stuff. So I know there's obviously politics, but when it comes down to it, if uh if guys want certain fights, I think they can get them. Like we go back to Yard, like let's say that Yard figured out who his opponent was last time, and he went to Warren and he went to his coach and he was like, here, let's go up a level. I want rounds. Whatever the case may be. I think I'm going to smoke this fella quick. Like, do you think if he came there and he said, like, I don't want this fight, I want something more challenging, something in the middle, do you think they would have been like, no, this is what you have to take? Like, how much power do you think the fighters have in all of this negotiation?
Not a lot, really, I don't think.
Really?
I think what fights get put to manager won't tell fighter everything,
Mm,
every offer on table. They'll work it for what's best for them.
mm,
You know what I mean? That's why
yeah.
it's very rare you get the promoter talkers at fighters. They've got to go through other people. And that's the hold up with most of the big fights because everybody wants to get their slice of the cake. You
No,
know,
that's a good point, mate. That's like the agents in football. Like Fergie said, agents will ruin football, mark my words. And like you said, they're about managers. The agents only make money if people leave football clubs. So they've got a different agenda at all times. And like you said there, the managers are want to be in good stead with the promoters, and that they're never gonna want that to change. So they're likely gonna kind of bend to Warren's will or Hill's will or whoever. So no, I get they're in a tough spot. But again, we talk about the sport of boxing surviving, growing again and whatnot. Like these cannon fodder fights, they just don't do it. Like you look at certain cards, there might be the top two fights might be really good. And then, what were you saying there a couple of weeks ago? It was like 10-0 on that TNT show or something like that. It's too predictable. It's um
oh yeah, I
it's way too predictable.
think it was 11 and I won it.
Something like yeah, mate, something like that.
Nine KOs for all brick top fighters.
And don't get me wrong, there were some enjoyable fights to watch in there. That's not what I'm getting at. But if it's just like again, I don't mean to make too many UFC references, but like you often see a 7-1 fighter beating somebody in the UFC. I say often, it doesn't happen every single week. But the point I'm making is you see upsets a lot. Now, I know in UFC, you've got your hands, you've got the ground, you've got kicks, you've got a load of different things. So I know there's more variables, but there's still way more upsets. And I think that's why people kind of go to the sport where, you see the 15th ranked guy fight the 6th ranked guy and he sparks him out or he chokes him out or whatever. We need more of that in boxing. We need more unpredictability because you're not going to revive the sport on shows where the hometown fighters are just all winning. It's just not going to happen, mate. you
Yeah,
know? It's not going to happen. Come here, coming back to Garcia, if I can, what do you make of the announcements recently? Garcia Haney and then Taylor Catterall.
well, I'm pleased for Sam Jones to get it up at line, even though it's not really a fight that's on everybody's lips, is it? Taylor Catterall too. But because we're getting it, we're all going to have to get excited because there's no else, is there?
No, I know there's been a couple of the BBBC has mandated a couple of domestic fights. Will they happen? Who knows? But domestically, yeah, obviously Taylor Catterall's a big announcement. I feel kind of, I don't know. I mean, I felt for Catterall at the time, but I think this fight's kind of lost a bit of its steam, you know. Well, again, that's not a hot take, but it's not the fight that it was. Um, yeah, I think the whole thing's a bit of a sad situation. Like I feel Josh Taylor got the bad end of the stick initially. Like he went, I remember over here because it was in Vegas, but it was during the pandemic. He became undisputed. And it wasn't on anywhere in the UK, and it was kind of like Sonny Liston when he came back, after winning the title to the airport, and there was nobody there for him. I think Taylor didn't get the recognition, even domestically, outside of the hardcores that he should have. Unbelievable achievement, and there wasn't much coverage at all. So I think he's always kind of had that as a chip on his shoulder, and I think it's rightly so. He should kind of feel aggrieved. Um, but I had Catterall beating him in that fight, and then obviously Lopez kind of stood him on his head. So, I mean, does that? I don't know. It's a hard one to call this. Like that's what I'm saying. Like you can make a very good argument that Taylor has lost both his last two fights, i.e., Catterall and Lopez. And I know Catterall hasn't looked great in his last couple, but on paper, I feel like Taylor's probably regressed more than Catterall. Who do you fancy in that one, pal?
I don't know, really. It's a bit of a dead duck now, isn't it?
Isn't it, man? It really is.
I
And
fancy Taylor.
yeah, probably Gundle ahead. I think it's probably 55-45 either way or 60-40. I mean, the one thing I would say from that first fight, Taylor didn't look at it. Um, and like again, I had Catterall winning, but if you go back and watch it, it wasn't much. Like it wasn't a great fight. I think it was more there was that surprise factor because people thought Catterall was going to go in there and get schooled, and he kind of turned the page and he looked good in terms of his game. He looked good, but the fight in terms of enjoyment, it wasn't a great scrap. Um, but it's definitely a hard one to call. What do you think of like? What do you think of the way Taylor's career has aged, like just very recently? Like what I mean by that is if you look at what Haney did to Prograis last time out, I know it was up a weight division, but he absolutely schooled him from pillar to post. And Josh Taylor went life and death with Prograis. So the kind of question I'm asking is, was Prograis ever, that elite level guy? Or did Haney kind of show him up a bit? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, does it make Taylor's one over Prograis look not as good now seeing what a guy like Haney did to him?
It's a few years ago, though, that, isn't it?
It
Progress.
is.
It is a
Yeah,
few
yeah. I think
years.
it's
And
four years ago.
he's probably at his peak. You know what I mean? And you could say Josh Taylor went life and death for him, yeah, but he did win that tournament and get all undisputed belts, didn't he?
He did. He did. Yeah. And I'm not trying to
Yeah,
throw
he had
crap on
his
him.
dues. He had his dues. It's a bit like Froch, really, isn't it? When he was doing the business and he weren't getting his dues.
Yeah. No, I think Taylor's been unlucky again. I think when he retires, people will look back at that undisputed and they will say, like, I hadn't beaten Prograis. Don't get me, I'm not saying there was any sort of bad decision. Um, but he didn't get his flowers the way he should have. And I think he's been kind of unlucky that some people look at him kind of like the villain now, because of the way he handled himself after Catterall. Like, and the abuse and stuff his family was getting too. Yeah, like that's well out of order. Like his missus getting messages and his family members and stuff. I think the decision was bad, but it's not Josh Taylor that was any of the judges. So yeah, I feel he's been a bit unlucky with the media and just the whole lot, mate. So I would like to see him kind of end his career on a high. Uh, and I think all things being equal, I think he should beat Catterall again. I think that was one of Catterall's best nights, and it was probably one of Taylor's worst. So I think if he's not a shot fighter, he should get the business done.
Yeah, but I think what's caught up with Taylor is he likes to live life on the hog, doesn't he?
Does it? I've heard he enjoys an old pint of diesel now and then, doesn't he?
A bit.
Good man. Standard Scotsman, like our boy Andy. It's
And it's about, does he, Andy?
some man, my Scottish hero.
Yeah.
Um, but no, we'll see. Again, I'm not kind of doing cartwheels over the fight, but I'm happy for both lads. I think it'll give them both a bit of closure. Kind of regardless who'll win. I know kind of Catterall was robbed. He'll never get that chance to get all the 4 belts ever again. Um, but yeah, I think it'll be closure. And it'll be nice too, because it's kind of simmered on in the media over the last couple of years. And yeah, it'd just be nice to kind of put a full stop to that chapter. But what do you think about Garcia versus Haney? What are your thoughts overall, and how do you think it's going to go?
Ain't
Oh yeah, oh yes. Um, I have a theory about Garcia. I think, and I know he's a young man. I think he has max 4 fights left, and the reason I say this is because he's fighting Haney. I don't think he wins, and I'm not just agreeing with you for the sake of it. I have Haney winning that 98 times out of 100. Um, I think Garcia, we talked about Yard previously, where it's big fights or cannon fodder. I think Garcia has so many other ways to make money. He's got a gazillion
you think he's
followers.
like a Chavez Jr.? They're just going to keep wheeling him out because they're going to get eyes on him with pay-per-view.
Little bit, sir. Yeah, I think that's a really good comparison. No, I think he does take it a bit more seriously. Like, I don't know, like Chavez Jr. held the world title and he beat Andy Lee. And I saw him recently. He fought against Anderson Silva in a boxing match, and he got absolutely schooled by a UFC fighter. So, yeah, just Chavez Jr. is a weird one. I think Garcia is better, but I think now, like, I think Haney beats him. I think a focused Lopez beats him. Like, Lopez always rises to the occasion. I know he's had some bad fights, but I think Garcia is a good matchup for Teo Lopez. So I think he's going to lose to that elite at 140. And I think he loses to Haney next. I think he probably has a layup. I think then he probably fights a Lopez because he is willing to take the big fights. But I see him, yeah, having like about 4 more, and then he'll pack it in. Because I know it's a tough sport, obviously, but I think he could have got up off I think he could have got up off that knee earlier against Tank. Um, you think of body shots in boxing. Like when you say body shot, I think of the way Triple G crucified Macklin. You saw Macklin on the canvas, man, and it looked like he had been shot in both knees, like rolling around. And I'm not taking a hand out of him. Like it looked perfect body shot. Like he was, you could have give him 2 minutes and he wouldn't have got up and continued to fight. Um, like Garcia, I'll send you an interview he did. He did this really weird interview recently, and he said that in the dressing room before he walked out for Tank, he said he knew he had lost the fight. So he said he knew he lost it in the dressing room, and he said he made peace with God in the dressing room, where he said this was God's path. So is that why he stayed down? Like, I'm not questioning anyone's religion, man. I just think it shows a lot about mentality when you've kind of given up already in the ring, or sorry, in the dressing room. Um, so I don't think when it comes down to it, I don't think he's got the stomach to be in the trenches. Maybe he'll prove me wrong, but I don't think he's got the stomach for the elite level. And he does. He says he trains like a Spartan. I do believe that, but I think he'll get fed up after the next couple of fights. I think he'll make a bucket of money. I think he'll pack it in, and he'll start making money, social media, and kind of and taking it more easy. That's what I think. Again, a lot of people will probably disagree, but I don't think Garcia's in it for the long haul.
No.
No, I
Could
just
you see him fighting any Brits?
any of the Brits. I mean, you could make him and Ben at 140. You can make him and Ben at 140. I think Ben's a small welterweight. I think 140 is perfect for Garcia. I've Garcia beating Ben. Um, like I think they've got a similar style in terms of trying to get in and landing big punches. But I think Garcia would probably put Ben to the canvas with that left hook with him coming in. Like that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying Garcia is like not a really good fighter. I think he is good. I just don't think that he's like when we talk about a Shakur, a Haney, a Tank. I don't think he's of that ilk. But I think he could go in and stop Conor Ben, no problem. That'd be a good fight to make, actually. What do you think, Paul?
Well, they put every name under the sun, haven't they, next to the Conor Benz in the last 2 weeks.
Exactly.
I don't know which it's going to be the way they've put that many names ahead of him in front of them.
Yeah.
Every single one of them's a pay-per-view fights, but they're nothingless fights as regards in moving up rankings.
For sure. I mean, let's try and do some math for a second, right? Let's say Haney beats Garcia, which I think he does easy. So that means that Garcia is 1-2 in his last three fights, albeit losses to Tank and Haney. Let's say Ben gets one more layup. He'll be 3-0 coming off the ban. Uh, you've got Garcia, you could say he's on a losing streak. You've got Ben with a couple of wins. Ben versus Garcia, or sorry, Garcia versus Ben would still definitely be a pay-per-view, whether it's in the UK or the US. Both boys would still make their money. It'd be high profile, and I think Garcia would look at that as not an easy night's work, but I would say he would fancy himself. So maybe hopefully we see Garcia Ben. I think it'd actually be a good matchup. Like I don't think it reaches the final bell. Somebody's getting stopped, and my money would be on Mr. Garcia.
Okay.
So let's go. Let's go. Mr. Eddie Hills. They're calling out everybody. We want this, we want that. Let's wait till the Haney fight's done and let's put Garcia in there against Ben. Let's see. Because you would get answers on both guys. It would prove, at least they would say it would prove Ben at the top level. And then, we would see if Garcia still really has a stomach for it. So I think it'd actually be a pretty good fight. Let's go.
Crusher would love that one at Vegas.
Oh, I'd love it. Absolutely love it. There'd be no Elvis Ballroom for that one. I'd say it'd be in the T-Mobile or it'd be a big fight. Definitely. Because Garcia does have a massive following. There's no doubt about that. So I think it would tick all the boxes. It would do business. It's a good matchup. So Eddie Hills, get on the phone to your best mate Oscar and let's make some lemonade.
You could get behind that fight, couldn't you? Really?
Absolute. I think it's, and I hadn't thought about it before you and I started talking about it, but I think there's a lot of good because I know Tank, we talked about it. I know Tank's a smaller guy, but I think Tank dismantles Ben at the joint. Garcia wouldn't break him. I think it could be a one-punch knockout, but I think it wouldn't be a dismantling of sorts. So I could definitely get behind that one. Let's go. You want to jump on the part two, Paul?
Yeah, go on then, mate. No
Nice
problem.
one. All right. See you in a sec.